So now we're at the ACP offices here in Brussels. That's the offices for the African, Caribbean and Pacific group of states. We have the pleasure of being joined by the Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Viwanou Gnassounou. He's actually responsible for sustainable economic development and trade and has extensive experience of policy formulation in the agricultural sector. What has been, or what do you think is the best plan of action in terms of the policies that African governments can put in place in order to guard themselves against some of the sort of more negative implications of the ending of the EU milk quota?
Yes, thank you. No, the impact of this decision for African countries will be really to see how the growth of our dairy sector can be maintained despite what is happening in Europe. So a plan of action should be a plan which takes into account the fact that we need to produce locally, because the path we are taking is to develop, not only to have the raw materials, but to have it processed, because that's where the value is, and to develop this the value chain in the sector. Any plan of action should take into account the necessity to protect the market, the African market, from, I would say, arrival of a massive quantity of EU milk. So that will request some tariff measures, and I'm aware that in many of our regions already they have some safeguard measures, or they have some tariff rates which is set to protect against the arrival of this kind of products. So there won't necessarily be need to have a new measures, but we have to activate those measures or to follow closely the implementation of action. The second aspect will be to try to take the opportunity of the experience from the EU sector. The sector have been protected for 30 years. They have some good experiences developed, and we can invite or see how best we can use this experience, bringing them to Africa and developing the milk sector locally. As part of our plan of action, what we can also envisage is to see a strategy to attract the EU investors with experience in the sectors, but not working on EU milk, but African produced milk, just to process it and to make it available for the African local market. And the third part will be, of course, to work more or to encourage and to assist the ACP, the African milk sector, to continue with what is going on now, which is investing massively in processing the milk and developing a market locally and with local resources.
So have you seen on the continent any responses from governments or from businesses to the ending of the EU milk quota? Have you seen that there has been a policy change or a business change, in a sense, in order to equip them?
No, it's too soon for that. It's too soon. Even here in Europe, even if it was announced, there's no clear reaction yet, because they are still not, maybe don't have the real sense of what is going on. Yeah. It's also part of our duties to take the issue further and to explain, to analyze clearly what is the implication. We have some sense of it. We share it with some of our member states, but we still have to do some more detailed analysis. So the reaction so far is still, there's no clear reaction so far, because we don't have clearly, we have not get even from the EU side, the EU dairy sector itself, a clear reaction to the new situation.
Okay. So I'm hearing that it's still quite premature in terms of policies and business reactions, but do you have any insights into maybe some of the policy choices that might work better or might be quite helpful to protect the African dairy sector? For instance, potentially if there is more of the EU dairy products coming into the market, or do you see that it's still premature? How do you see that?
The easiest way for our countries is to impose some tariff measures clearly, and as I was saying, we have to look into the situation and see what is now planned. So 3 things then: tariff measures, attract investors from Europe, and then the last one also being to ourselves developing the processing activities in our country.
So keeping the concentration on the African side, what role do you see for regional integration in terms of protecting Africa or the dairy sector? And actually, I suppose it's a wider question about protecting African industry when policy changes are made from the EU side. Do you see that regional integration can actually help African countries to better trade between their neighbours and therefore maybe withstand some of the shocks that happen at the European Union level?
No, definitely, because if you plan a response in, I would say, put it properly, tiny territory, and of course you do not have, I just mentioned the economy of scale, you do not have it. But if you need to develop a response to what's happening here, you need the space, you need a good number of consumers to do that. So definitely regional integration or the largest possible economic zone would be necessary to respond to that. But also in some regions like ECOWAS, we have the common external tariff, which enable the region as a whole to have a common measure against what's happening here. And that will strengthen the regional organization because you protect your market, not one country against another, but because if it is one country against another, of course the people outside your zone will play one against the others. But now you have, like in West Africa, you have the ECOWAS plus Mauritania having a common external tariff. So you have a huge territory which enable you to develop an industrial policy which can be sustainable economically and socially as well. So yes, regional integration definitely is the best approach to respond to the situation.
Okay, thank you. And I suppose the next question is if you could kind of taking the EU milk quota as an example of some of the challenges and potentially opportunities that you've highlighted. Do you have any other examples of EU policy areas in the agricultural sector where you think there could be similar impacts or that African governments maybe, should really pay attention to because it could disrupt the market quite a lot?
Yes, I mean, it's already happened in the sugar sector. We have seen it a few years ago. Now it's happened, it's going to happen because 2017 is now targeted to be the end period of the total liberalization of the EU sugar market. And then what we have seen so far is that what's have been predicted is not what's happening. The EU have planned that the price should be stabilized at a certain level, still going down. So economic model are not always. Somebody used to say that God created economists just to compensate the meteorologists from the forecast. So we take decisions based on some expectation, but the reality generally is not what we foresee. So in the sugar sector, we have faced it. Some of our countries reacted very well. They asked the same thing we're proposing for the milk sector. They, instead of continue exporting raw sugar to the EU market, they are not exporting because the liberalization also opened the door for processed product to come into Europe. Yeah. So they're now processing 100% of the sugar locally, and they're just exporting processed sugar, white sugar, no more brown sugar. So there's we still can react to the situation. Of course, we generally we are caught because it requires a lot of means and years to develop new strategies. Yeah. One, for example, in the EU market, it takes, to grow beet and produce sugar is several years, several times in a year. But if we in ACP Africa countries, we produce cane sugar, it takes 7 years to grow cane and to have sugar out of it. So adjustment period is not the same as here. The same way, when you look at our cows and you look at European cows, you will wonder if they are the same kind of animals. What it takes for our people to grow cows and to grow to have the milk might be longer than what is obtained here in Europe. So the adjustment period might be longer as well, or the requested adjustment period might be longer also on our side. So It's happened already in the sugar sector. We warned our people, they took the necessary measures. There were some accompanying measures, but still we are seeing that what was given is not enough to compensate for the loss that we actually witnessed in the sector. So in the dairy, maybe we do not have ACP or African countries do not have a market as such in Europe, because what we are producing was for the local market generally, apart from some camel's milk which were also exported to Europe, but very limited export to Europe. We used to have a beef exportation to Europe, but that also was from Southern Africa, was reduced since the end of the protocol in 2010. So here we do not have a huge market. What our fear is more the disruption in our local market from what will be coming from here. We have it, so as I said, sugar, milk now. Actually, the EU Common Agricultural Policy is now almost fully liberalized. So it's left to the market forces to drive the process. We will not be expecting more liberalization as such, but we have now to monitor the policy decision being made in terms of market instruments, how the market is being driven, and see, anticipate early enough the reaction. Our ministers of trade met end of June as a part of the ACP MTC, Ministerial of Trade Committee, and then we met with the Commission. This is something is part of the Cotonou Agreement. So African ministers were there as part of the ACP group. And one of the mandates of the MTC and the GMTC, which is a Joint Ministerial Trade Committee, in the ACP and EU, and then also African ministers are part of it, is to identify any area where EU decision may impact negatively the trade or the economic situation in our countries, and to make the necessary recommendation to the ministers. I mean, apart from the trade, we have the joint ACPU Council of Ministers, which meets once a year. And the GMTC, the Joint Ministerial of Trade meeting, should make recommendation whenever we think there's any measures taken by the EU which is likely to impact negatively our economic situation and our trade relation with the Europe, and make recommendations. So there's a mandate for that body to look at the situation closely and to make the necessary recommendation for action to be taken, being compensation, being accompanying measure, whatever it is, being maybe also sometimes we obtain also a delay in the decision-making process, just to have enough time to adjust our economies before the liberalizations takes place.
The ending of the EU milk quota, what's in it for Africa?
Let's say challenges. Challenges, but you know, we used to have a sort of predictable environment in Africa compared, I mean, in the case of the milk sector, the EU decision, even though it was a bit foreseen, because having a delay since 2003, 2008 and 2015 now, it just happened end of March 2015. But it's coming with new challenges but we can also see opportunities. I used to say when you're facing challenges, then you can develop your all the potential that you have. So our countries have a lot of potential. We're not using all of them. So now we are facing challenges in terms of being invaded by the possible surplus from the EU market, and will be cheaper in terms of production costs, because there's no more quota, there's no more levy to pay. So they might arrive at a lower price, and our countries have to demonstrate the capacity to protect their own market, but at the same time develop internally the capacities of our dairy sector for our processors to take the full potential of what is in there for them to produce and to make available good quality product for our consumers.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Viwanou Gnassounou. So that's the end of the In the Issues section of the show. We've gone over a lot about the ending of the EU milk quota, how it can be good for African consumers, but how it also can be detrimental for the dairy markets on the continent, and how we have to really prepare for some of these policy changes. So thank you